Então, Nath, o que você achou disso tudo?
Olha, falar de educação é um tema de extrema importância, né, Rodrigo? Inclusive, eu tenho uma pergunta para você. Com base na fala do Francisco, o que você acha nos dias de hoje de agregar a tecnologia à educação?
Olha, Nath, é fundamental pensar que não é possível dissociar o ambiente que a gente vive do processo educacional. É, Nosso modelo educacional ainda continua muito centrado num modelo que já tem séculos de existência, que foi desenhado num contexto totalmente diferente. Existem universidades que são pré-revolução industrial, mas desde a revolução industrial você trabalha num processo de educação em série, que é o mesmo processo que você produz, né? Então é um processo muito industrial. E isso põe a perder uma série de questões relevantes para os dias de hoje. Então, a hora que você tenta igualar todas as pessoas em um conjunto de assuntos e você torna isso obrigatório e você não dá espaço para as pessoas terem performances diferentes, você basicamente desce a barra do desenvolvimento de cada pessoa. Porque é óbvio que se você tem mais facilidade com o tema, você vai se desenvolver mais naquilo do que em outro que você tem alguma dificuldade. Quando a gente limita isso, a gente pode, de um lado, matar vários Einsteins, né, enquanto a gente não cria o que poderíamos criar. Né? Então, o ser humano, cada indivíduo é diferente. E nós não seremos, pelo menos se a gente pensar em fazer o máximo do nosso potencial, nós não seremos bons em tudo. Isso não existe. Você pode ser incrível em alguma coisa e muito ruim em outra. Né? E é normal. Eu sou, talvez, não sei se eu sou incrível em alguma coisa, mas certamente eu sou muito ruim em algumas. Então, assim, a nossa educação ela precisa não só incorporar tecnologia, mas ela precisa mudar para os tempos que vivemos, né? Do ponto de vista de contexto. Então, contexto mais tecnologia, mais espaço para que as pessoas se desenvolvam, pode produzir resultados incríveis.
Muito bom, Rodrigo, muito obrigada. E antes de darmos continuidade, eu quero agradecer a todos e todas que estão nos acompanhando. Bom, vamos continuar no Qatar para falar sobre cidades inteligentes, Copa do Mundo e inovação. Quem participa do painel é o John McIntyre, diretor executivo da Qatar Foundation.
Well, first of all, again, it's a pleasure to be able to introduce another guest from Qatar. As you all know, I have shared that I've been there. I have seen and experimented all these changes firsthand. We were just talking to Francisco Marmolejo about it. So I would like to host now John McIntyre. John, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thank you very much for accepting our invitation. And if you don't mind, I would like to start with something that Francisco just mentioned briefly. Qatar Foundation has different hats. It's somehow working with the educational part, but also involved in so many other activities, right? And I have been to Qatar over the last 4 years, 3 times, 3 weeks per tour, and I have seen the changes that Doha has been building to not just accommodate the World Cup, but also to keep investing into the city, education city, and all the infrastructure that you have focused on innovation and education. So, starting with this, could you introduce yourself and could you share with us what is your main goal in Qatar Foundation? So, sorry, John. I guess. Yes, I guess you're.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, yes, sure. Thank you, John.
No problem.
So,
Thank you.
Feel free to go ahead.
Okay. Thank you so much, Rodrigo, for inviting me. Very glad to be part of this this presentation and your event. Would be very interested to learn more about your organization and what's going on in Brazil also. We sharing these types of activities and everything, and doing things jointly, bringing different ideas from around the world actually makes things much more interesting and helps us solve problems. So my name is John McIntyre. I am the director of what's called Industry Development and Knowledge Transfer. Francisco, who just spoke, he is the president of higher education in Qatar Foundation. There is also the K through 12 activities in education in Qatar Foundation, as well as community development. So it's 3 legs to a stool: community development, education, and research development and innovation. When you think about a country and developing the aspects for a country to actually go forward and to, go from a petrochemical based economy into an economy that is knowledge based and is helping to create an avenue for innovation and entrepreneurship, you have to have that community development aspiration, which requires the education. But education is not just the K through 12 going through high school type aspects, but it is the research, the education on the higher end, the higher education with the college. But the college education doesn't actually end there. If you don't have the research component, then you don't have the full aspect of what education can do for society. So that's why the research, development, innovation part of the organization was put together. So as we learned from Francisco, Qatar Foundation actually started, it was 25th anniversary last year. It's our 26th year, and it was about 16 years ago that they started to look at research and adding the research and development arm to Qatar Foundation. At that time, there was the Qatar National Research Fund, which was put together. Qatar National Research Fund has funded so far since that time around $1.5 billion US dollars in research. And these are grants that go to different institutions, and it's not just institutions in Qatar, but QNRF has been a real engine to create an activity and an environment for collaboration. And so institutions here in Qatar, some of which you learned about from Francisco, there's different universities. We also have 3 research institutes. One is the Qatar Biology Research Institute, and that's QBRI. And then we have the Qatar Computational Research Institute, QCRI. And we have QIRI, which is Qatar Environment and Energy Research Institute. And their function is to act as national labs to solve problems in those different spaces, and then also do a lot of cross-pollination with their activities. So with all of that effort in research and development, we have a lot of different things that go on. So from that time frame, from 2007 to 2020, we've actually till to today, we've had about 850 invention disclosure reports reported to our office, and from that we have had over 100 patents issue from around the world, and then we have had some licensing activity as of recent. What's interesting about Qatar is that prior to the research development and innovation division being put onto Qatar Foundation, research was really not known here, and intellectual property was actually very new. People didn't know about it. It was not in the forefront of their minds, and I would say that was not just for Qatar, but it was also for the region itself. So when I came to Qatar Foundation 8 years ago, we started our office in 2013. And that office was the first intellectual property office in the country to handle knowledge transfer, technology transfer activities from research activities. Of course, there was the Qatar Patent Office, which is, handling patent activity, but we are the engine that's actually creating patent activity for the Qatar Patent Office, as well as other players. One thing about our office is that since we're trying to really help build an innovation ecosystem that is unsurpassed, we're trying as much as possible to utilize intellectual property and these research results that come from all of these different institutions, and have them help solve Qatar's problems, but also problems that are throughout the world. And in doing so, we're able to help people understand what intellectual property is about, and know what how we go about in doing things. I want to give you a little bit of idea as to how our office works. We have 4 core functions. One is intellectual property management, which then takes us to commercialization and licensing. The next thing is innovation management and recognition. And so this is trying to make sure people are recognized for their activities in the patent space, their activities with copyrighted software, with anything that happens to be commercialized, that they get recognition for that. And that's the innovation management side. And then we also do industry support and business development. And what this part does, we have a group called Al-Kabir. And Al-Kabir is the expert in Arabic. And so we provide expert services for intellectual property related issues. As I said, Qatar Foundation was the first intellectual property office here in the country. And so we found right after we started the office that people in the country were very interested in learning about intellectual property and how to protect their own intellectual property. So this service is a professional service that is meant to help the small entrepreneurs, startups, small and medium-sized enterprises in Qatar with their intellectual property. Qatar Foundation also supports what's called the Stars of Science, and the Stars of Science is also a MENA region-based activity where it's a program that have people compete to do innovation. And they're here for 6 months' time, and they try to create their idea into a product or service. And we also support their activities. And as a gift to them, we take care of their first patents and everything. So for our office, not only do we handle the intellectual property from Qatar Foundation entities, but we also handle it for the general hospital in town called Hamid Medical Corporation, HMC. And there's a research hospital, which is a part of Qatar Foundation, but it's a separate entity, and that's called Sidra Research. And they do research on medical type activities. And then we also handle intellectual property that is owned by Qatar Foundation through the funding of QNRF with other entities like Qatar University and the sort. So with that wide reach, we're able to help the organizations do more with their technology and spinning out companies and also licensing things to the world.
If you allow me to interrupt you, you just mentioned two very interesting things. As a venture builder myself, you mentioned Star of Science, right? I had the opportunity to met people from this program twice when traveling to Qatar on the last years, and it's quite interesting that you are highlighting young researchers and young students in terms of helping them to expose themselves and to actually launch their research into an intellectual property. I have met some of them last year and the year before. It was, I must say, first of all, it's amazing the way that you are doing it. So from a foreigner, I would like to congratulate on that. But particularly what you mentioned about the way you license and deal with intellectual property, I must say that I have seen in Qatar a cutting edge approach from a government point of view in terms of how you license such intellectual property. So I've met people from a program that you have organized to license intellectual property throughout the creation of new ventures. And then you are also the early stage investors. So first of all, I must say that is amazing. I've never seen a program like this anywhere in the world. From the government perspective, there is, for example, Startup Chile. We're going to host people from Startup Chile later on, which is a kind of a different experience. But you have done an amazing thing. You have not just funded and structured your research labs and centers, but then you move one step ahead and you started to fund new ventures to be launched based on your licensing. That means if you could talk a little bit about this, because I can tell you I've never seen a program like this anywhere. I have seen, of course, universities trying to license their intellectual property. It's well done in US, perhaps in Europe, the European Union, some parts, but it's badly done in Latin America. It's badly done in Brazil. It's badly done in so many other places. And you have done in a way that it's like, at least I've never seen personally, a program like yours. So if you allow me to ask a little bit more about it, because it seems that people must know how you did it, because it's amazing. Could you comment on that a little bit?
Sure. So first of all, one thing about Qatar Foundation, just to clarify things, it's a private-public partnership. So it's really a private foundation funded by the Qatar royal family, and then the government, of course, also supports the activity. So more than just a government program, it's an entity that's really trying to develop human potential. And so in regards to innovation and everything, I've been doing this type of work around the world, and so have people on my team. And what I've learned in my career is that you really need to look at a community and see what its strengths are, see where its weaknesses are, and you kind of do a patchwork quilt of different things. So taking different concepts that have been used, that I've used in different places around the world. I've consulted with the Japanese government, the Singapore government, the Chinese government, worked for a US national laboratory within the Department of Energy, worked for a major university, the University of Illinois, and each one of those organizations has a unique aspect to it. So you have to kind of mold yourself within that culture. So as part of the molding in the culture, we've figured out that it's very important to provide support mechanisms for these different things. So the programs that you're talking about, we have what's called Research to Startup, or RTS. And what we do with that is that we take the research results that IDKT, my office, has decided makes sense to go forward and fund for protection and also for market activities. And with research to startup, we showcase these technologies that are at a high technology readiness level, around a TRL 6, 7, 8, maybe even a 9, things that are already actually in use. And we call for entrepreneurs to come from around the world. Now, you had mentioned something about how we do things with the young people here, and there's specific reasons for that. The older people, they may be involved with maybe funding activities ultimately, but we find that the people need to have a certain understanding of new technologies and everything to be able to go into this. So the younger aspect is something that we're it's just a natural that they come in and are interested in the things that we're doing. And then also, as has been talked about in Francisco's talk, in your introduction of our activities, you've also mentioned how the Arab Innovation Academy, Stars of Science, these are all geared towards the youth here in the Arab MENA region, and trying to showcase those things. So the Research to Startup program, we bring in maybe about 20 entrepreneurs from around the world. They look at maybe 10 technologies. They do after a week of getting to know the technologies with the researchers, they then put together a pitch in regards to why it would be good for them to potentially be the licensee of that technology. As a serial entrepreneur, which is what we look for, with help from the Qatar Science Technology Park venture people. They're the ones who fund this activity for us. We then get this mini business plan, and we look at those and see which ones with their pitch as to which ones actually make the most sense to go forward. Another program that we have is called Entrepreneur in Residence, and this is a little bit different than what EIRs are in different science parks. There's one EIR in a science park, or maybe a couple, and they're there, off and on, and they help different technologies. What we do is we actually go back out into the world field, and for somebody within that specialty, and see if they would be interested in doing usually a 3-month project. The first month would be a feasibility study. And if things actually go well during that feasibility study, yes, it has a market potential. The protection looks like it's good for that technology. Then we go on to what does the potential opportunity look like, and that would be the second month, and then the third month would be really fine-tuning what would be a business plan. And the idea would be that this seasoned entrepreneur who we have hired as a consultant to do this activity for us, that they're looking for their next opportunity, and this would be a potential startup for them. And so we've actually done 5 startups this way, with both EIR or the RTS, or both together. And it's proven to be a really good way of solidifying things. Now, QSTP, with their venture funding arm, they're able to put in the first chunks of money, which would be $500,000. And that's usually tranched, so it's not all at once, but after certain milestones are met, then they would actually be able to get that funding. We require, of course, a regular business plan, require that for the license, they'd have to have that, and they need to be able to have their development on the technology side and the marketing side, and have all those things played out. So we've been doing this way of doing things for about 4 years, and it's really proven to be well. It's helped us to kind of close some of the gaps that are there inherently, and really support the research going towards the company. Just this last year, we started 2 new things. One is called Innovation Fellowship, and what this is a startup de-risking activity. And we know that usually the scientists, the researchers, don't necessarily want to be, or maybe are not the best people to be running a business, but they would like to have a startup at some point. And but they may have the go-to-itiveness to actually try and figure things out. So the Innovation Fellowship is a place where my boss, who is the Vice President for Research, Development, and Innovation, Dr. Richard O'Kennedy, his office funds that research group's activities. So this one researcher would get this fellowship, and 40% of their time could go to this pre-commercialization, pre-startup, de-risking activity, and that 40% of that time would then be paid for by our office, and then they would have somebody else be able to be hired to handle their regular work. One more program is called entrepreneurial leave, and this is where we can allow a person who is usually the lead researcher on a technology that we just licensed out to a startup company, and they're able to take off up to 20% of their time. In Qatar, you have to have a sponsor, and that sponsor pays for your housing, it pays for your children's schooling, it pays for your insurance, it pays for your ability to live in the country, and is your sponsor to actually get your visa. And so if you don't have that sponsorship, you can't work in Qatar. So we were able to work it out so that 20% of their time would be their salary would be decreased, but their benefits would stay in place, so they could stay in the country. And then that 20% time would be used by the startup company to do more strategic activities with that technology, so that we're actually bridging the gap even more. And then that's proving to work out well.
First of all, it's a pleasure to have you here, and all this that you just mentioned it's amazing. I have had the opportunity to experiment firsthand in Qatar, but I was like really keen to hear from you and Francisco about it. So thank you very much for being here with us today. I hope that we can meet each other in person soon enough. And yes, once again, thank you very much, John. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. Have a great event.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.